Good morning and welcome to SimWorld today. It's gonna be May. May 1st, I'm Marsh, joined this morning special guest, B. Ron Stradamus, in the building in all of his crystal ball abilities. Good morning, B. Ron, how are you?
Marsh, I am fantastic. It's a great day to be here with you on SimWorld today. It's a great day for basketball fans, both college and pro basketball, but especially college basketball. I'm excited to talk about all of it with you, man. Let's go.
It's a great day to be May, and it is officially conference championship season. One day off from the end of the regular season now to conference championship games. We're going to talk some of that. We're going to talk some of SWBA from last night, but let's start with conference championship games as a whole. And give me one player that you are most excited to watch here in the conference title games.
One player, that's tough. Because there's so
Meant
many,
to be.
man. So many to talk about, man. All right. But I'm going to go with Jamison Johnson. And here's my reasoning for that. There has been a lot of talk throughout his playing career, through his time in SimWorld Prep and through his time now in SimWorld U, about his lack of aggressiveness with the basketball or assertiveness in trying to get the basketball. And
Sure.
we saw it in their last game. Their last game they played, he only had 12 points, and he had a good game, sure. I think he had a double, 12 points, 15 rebounds, that kind of thing. But it wasn't the kind of game that you could look at and say, yeah, this guy is a Lamarian Sherwood-esque kind of dominant big man. And I think that lack of aggressiveness is still a cause for concern for Johnson in terms of how he's perceived by scouts. And I think that there is some concern about that as far as him being a number one overall pick when you talk about that kind of thing in particular, Marsh, with that aggressiveness or lack thereof in Johnson's case. So for me, that's a big one. And I think that also with that too comes this perspective of, because of his lack of aggressiveness, he's not going to be able to lead his team to win the big game. And this is a big game they have coming up against Alabama for the SEC title.
Yeah.
So
a massive one. I think the winner of that game gets a number one seed, which is not an insignificant thing. I mean, compared to a 2 seed, not big difference, but still a difference all the same. I think Jamison Johnson feels like we're in the age-old question of the big man, right? Is he playing basketball because he loves basketball, or is he playing basketball because he's big? Right. And
yeah.
I think that's kind of the age-old argument that's gone, James Wiseman, I think, was the most recent one that had that. Before that, there was, why am I blanking on his name for the Lakers? That I've got to look it up, otherwise.
Anthony Davis?
Well,
he used to play for the Lakers.
Kwame Brown was the big one, but I'm going back further than that. Who the heck? They got him from the Sixers. And now I can't.
I'm blanking on the name too, unfortunately.
It wasn't Kwame Brown, but anyway. So it's just the latest. That's the issue we have, right, with big men is who's going to be the big concern for the big man. And I don't disagree that I think that's a big one, because you watch him play, and especially in the last time they played against Alabama, and it was really disappointing. Just I thought he settled for a lot of
jump shots.
A lot of poor shots, jump shots. Andrew Bynum, that's the one I'm thinking of there. Now I can rest in peace. But yes, I thought he settled for a lot of jump shots. He would have smaller guards on him, and he wouldn't try to force his way into the paint, which is just not something that you see from a guy of his talent level. So I think it's a great call for a player to watch. For me, the player that I'm most interested in watching is Nas Hall, because Kansas in this matchup with Texas, I've been on a Kansas kick, if you will, B-Ron, for the last couple weeks.
It's a good pick.
I'm just really it is a good kick to be on. I'm really more months than weeks. I mean, I've said Nas Hall's the second best freshman in this class, and I think we're going to start seeing rubber meet road with this group, and it's a big test against Texas. They've got a chance to lock up. I think the winner of that game as well becomes a number one seed because you're going to have with all that. Texas and Kansas could be looking at a one seed with this, and I think that matters. And I think it's are we going to continue to see this resurrection? Or, not a resurrection. I talked about this on the podcast yesterday. This arrival of Nas Hall continue, or was that just a flash in the pan, albeit a really impressive one that should give you really a lot of confidence for next season?
Yeah, I like the Nas Hall pick too. I've been high on Kansas for a while since for the majority of the season. Really, I've been high on them next to Maryland. But we know how Maryland fizzled out at the end there. But no, I do think that
Quickly.
yes, exactly. I do think that Nas Hall though is definitely going to be one of those guys to look out for. Kansas, I think they're a really complete team personally, and they're my favorite to win Hoopsteria.
Ooh.
I'm calling it right now. I'll have more thoughts on that later down the road here, but that's a really good pick for Kansas, and Nas Hall particularly had to be your guy to watch, Marsh. I like that one a lot.
All right, let's go to the next. Let's take a look at the conference championship games as a most. What of the 16 teams playing over the next 4 days? Who needs a conference title the most?
I think it has to be one of the Big Ten teams between Minnesota
Okay.
and Purdue, because there's a lot of hype around a lot of the other games, Marsh, but this one,
Oh yeah,
this one just seems like it's kind of there. You know what I mean? It's just kind of there
it
in the
does.
middle between a lot of the other big games we have. Yeah, it's going on a Sunday, and after that it's Utah and UCLA on Sunday. But I think that Big Ten is one that needs the most. Minnesota is it? Neither of these teams, Marsh. I said it last night in my article. Neither of these teams were the team that I expected to be in this spot. I expected it to be Maryland and Michigan being in this spot.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of those ended up being here. So to see both these teams get here is impressive in itself, but I think for Minnesota, it would mean a little bit more to them in particular. You look at a guy like Donald Ifedi, who has a lot riding on his shoulders with this team. He's the de facto star of the team. Purdue has Majere Williams and Pierre Dupont as their two main guys in terms of freshmen who are playing really well for them. Ifedi kind of has to do it by himself in some respects, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, I think Minnesota needs it the most.
If Minnesota gets the win, that would be their 17th win of the season. That would be the same number of wins this year as New Mexico, St. Mary's, Maryland, Indiana, Kansas State, and I think those are all the 17 win teams. Not a group of teams that many people would look to and say, I'm concerned about them. If Purdue were to get their 18th win, that would pretty much, that's kind of the top 25 threshold as I'm looking around. Anyone with 18 wins or more is in the top 25, so that would be a pivotal, literally Jackson State is number 25 with that 18th win. So if they were to get there, that kind of goes to show just how low on the totem pole they are. Because I think that really does matter. We're going to have a conference champion that's going to be a 6, 7, maybe even an 8 seed in Hoopsteria. That's not really all that high. But the team that I think needs the conference championship the most is Virginia Tech. I know that's the number one team in the country. I know they've been one of the hottest teams in the country, 7 straight wins. But I think there's still a very big imposter syndrome that surrounds this team. They have not proven until very recently to be able to beat the best teams in the country. I went back a couple weeks ago, I had their podcast where all their wins are against really good teams. They don't lose to bad teams, but they also don't beat the good teams. They're competitive but don't get there. They beat Louisville in that dramatic game not too long ago. But if you can beat Duke in a conference championship game, I think that goes a long way. Should you care if people consider you to be a title favorite? No, you shouldn't. But I think beating Duke would be by far their biggest win of the season. And kind of this last statement of saying when the ball goes up, you can't not count us in because we are just that good and we can hang with them. we've lost all of our games: Kansas, Alabama, Duke, and Louisville. All of them by 10 points or less. Now we're getting over the hump, and I think they need that. I think they need that. Maybe they're going to be outwardly saying they don't need it from a confidence perspective, but I think internally they do think they need that win.
March again. I like that pick too for that reason you mentioned. Virginia all season has been a team that has been really good, and I think that in the court of public opinion, they have been despite that they've still been this team that people are still like, well, can they really do it? And I think that a win against Duke would, like you said, cement that. Yeah, we can, and guess what? We're going to try to win the whole dang thing, too, in Hoops area. We're going to do the same thing in Hoops area, too. So I think this would be a good win to put them really in front of people's faces to say, in a vindicated kind of way, Marsh.
All right, let's head to the association where last night the Houston Rockets got a Game 5 win, 131-116, but do not be fooled by that score. This game was over since the opening half. Any panic if you're Golden State and you're sitting there now after a blowout win? Do you think the Rockets have a second wind that they're going to rally back with and find a way to win that series?
No. I say that as a question because, look, it's playoff basketball and everything gets ramped up in this environment. You get a win at home, which you should do in all senses of the word there. But I think that this Golden State team, I think they've had a bad night, and that's going to happen. In any game, you're not going to be on every time. We talk about that a lot, March, too. You're not going to be on every game. Steph Curry, he had 13 points last night. Like, that's not a typical Steph Curry game.
No, it's not.
So, yeah, I don't think there's be any concern for the Warriors. I will say, though, just because there should be any concern doesn't mean you can't play like it. There's a difference there, March.
Yes, so let's take a little time machine. Let's go back to the day of May 11th, 2022, where the Golden State Warriors holding a 3-1 advantage over a young, chippy, I'm not going to call them dirty, but maybe almost there, Memphis squad. They go on the road as the 3 seed facing a 2 seed, and they give up a 134-95 loss that the Memphis Grizzlies then play Whoop That Trick. Steph Curry and Draymond Green are seen dancing around. And then the Warriors turn around in Game 6 at home and march their way to a 110-96 victory to close out the series, move on to the conference finals, and of course from there they win the SWBA championship over, the Memphis side of it, over in that Memphis series against a guy named Dylan Brooks. That is, I think, what happened here. The Golden State Warriors said, we're beat up, our team is full of veterans, and we need some rest. And they did not come with the energy and the desperation that the Houston Rockets did. Steph Curry played 23 minutes, but Jimmy Butler played 25 minutes. Draymond Green played 18 minutes. The plug was pulled early in this game when this team was very clearly just not in it emotionally. I think Houston needed this win much more than Golden State did, not just because of the fact that if you lost, you're eliminated. But they needed this win to show we can get up off the mat, right? When we get punched in the face, we can get up and we can battle back and we can get things done. Now, though, you have to try to do that on the road where they were not good offensively in Golden State at any point. So, no, to me, the panic meter is not there. I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody that knows where my fandom lies. But at the same time, I think the Rockets really needed to do this. They needed to see their young stars, Amen Thompson, look good, Fred VanVleet look good. They didn't really get a great night from Jalen Green, but Alperen Sengun looked really good. So they needed this win much more than the Warriors did. Obviously, again, because of the series, but just to prove as a young team, when the going gets rough, I think this is a type of game that could shape the future of a lot of their young stars to say, this is how we can respond. Now we just need to put ourselves in positions where we don't have to respond.
Right, exactly. And I think for a young team like the Rockets, this does do a lot for them confidence-wise, which is why I said what I said earlier with Golden State. You can't, just because the panic meter isn't there, doesn't mean you can't act like it isn't there. Because if you give a young team like this confidence, that confidence can go a long way for them, and you could be looking at a case where it's all of a sudden 3-3, and now you're fighting for your life in the final game of the series.
And yes, you don't want the goal. If you're the Golden State, that is the only danger of this. Although if you're sitting there as Draymond Green, Steph Curry, and Jimmy Butler, and you're saying, well, we have been in much more challenging moments than a 3-2 Game 6 at home against the Houston Rockets in the opening round. I think they might feel a little bit of confidence on that one. All right, B-Ron, I appreciate you coming in and joining us. You are on the first call of Hoopsteria tonight with one Drayton, Jackson State, and Memphis. So folks can tune into you then. And then what? You're coming back to everybody. You're going to Indiana for the Purdue Minnesota matchup. Correct? That's where everyone's going to be tuning in for you.
Correct. Yeah, correct. It'll be tonight. The Jackson State Michigan game, Memphis game, and then right, and then yes, with the Purdue Minnesota game for that Big Ten championship game. Should have been Maryland and Minnesota, but Maryland and Michigan, but that didn't happen. We know how those two teams ended up doing in the conference this season. Disappointments all around.
We do. That we do. All right, B-Ron, thank you again, and thank you all for tuning in here on SimWorld TV, the only place you can see the game, be the game.